we've broadcast from a lot of countries around the world, but we haven't broadcast from the Ukraine before. So I'm really excited that we're going to get a chance to explore conservation in Ukraine. So we have Bohdan Prots joining us. He is an associate professor. He is the CEO of the Danube-Carpathian Programme in Lviv, Ukraine. He is a Whitley Award winner for nature conservation. So if you don't know what that's all about, it's basically the green Oscars of nature conservation. So he has 32 years of expertise and research studies in biodiversity and natural resource management in countries of Europe and Asia. And for more than 11 years, he has worked as the leader of WWF in Ukraine. So I'm going to bring him in live with us right now. Here we go. We've got you. How you doing today?
Hi, Joe. Fine, thank you very much.
Good. Well, it's great to have you with us. In the world of science, in the world of conservation, we know all about flexibility, and you were going to try to do this from the field for us, but connectivity just doesn't always cooperate sometimes. So we've got the next best thing. We're going to dive into your work with some amazing visuals.
Thank you. This is quite amazing event, this Global BioFest, because I would say it's completely unusual in some way, but for me, when on one side we're just running for nature conservation, on another side we're just dealing with a huge war which is around the corner, and that makes quite a challenge, and sometimes it's completely unusual. It's a mixture of different feelings which is providing you, giving you next challenge step, thinking on strategies, thinking on future, and giving you different ways to get into development, better development. I just wanted to get presentation. I just wanted something which is completely unusual for nature conservation, but it's something which many countries facing, and to share with you how we're dealing with many problems which is running for the moment. As Joe said, I am representing world on one side science, on another side civil society activist, as a CEO of the Danube-Carpathian Programme and the head of department in State Museum of Natural History. These days give us two different measures. On one, it's a destroying nature, and another is to protect nature. And you can recognize on one side when nature need to be evaluated how much it is destroyed. On another, you're just running behind to get these incredible nature values to get protected in a different way. My choice in life was just because I spent my childhood at wetlands, and then it was very easily to get spent childhood, and then it was influenced my life choice. Achievement which my and my colleagues and NGO, what we've been running, and it's work with UNESCO Heritage Cluster to protect virgin old-growth forest, beech forest, over 5,000 hectares in UNESCO property now. Then expansion, some of the incredible in the Carpathian Biosphere Reserve to support it, and small-scale protected area establishment, which is usually also linked with old-growth forest, establishing over 10,000 hectares of Ramsar site, about 10 new Ramsar sites we've been able to establish over the last years. And something what we will tell it a little bit about restoration activity of wetlands. It's a Ramsar site which is started to be degraded through the climate change, and restoration of natural forest. And what I can see now when we look, one of achievement is to survive in a war and get operational, because many of our colleagues just now fighting, many of our colleagues left country, many of NGO disappeared. So this is completely reshaped situation, completely very different, and many opportunity for development at the current moment. And at the same time, is a plenty of hardship. War, when you see destruction, war just helps better to appreciate the nature. You understand, and especially for our people who is fighting, soldiers in the front line, they just feeling why they are fighting, because they are fighting for their idea, which is for Ukrainian always been a cherry garden, which people wanted to get back to family, back to home, and they are fighting for their land. When we started war, which been completely unpredictable and was very difficult for us to handle situation, we decreased completely our activities as a ecological environmental NGO, and we started change to humanitarian support. Just for period of Russian invasion in Ukraine, and trying to provide support for most needed people, children, and also for urgent life-threatening human cases during the war period. So it was donations to the hospitals, helping our soldiers, very different support. We've been raised almost $100,000 from International Ecological Organization in cash and in goods. On left side, you see one of our car which been purchased for soldiers and for humanitarian mission, but this is photo from Bakhmut, and this completely is destroyed. War is something which is you plenty of making donations, and this war is just eating everything and destroying. So this one of these cars, we bought actually up to 6 cars, but it's one of them what we've been able to catch our colleagues a picture, which they just in the flames in Bakhmut at the moment. War is getting you something what you never been expected, and you always say, what is primary? Security or nature conservation. And at the current moment, countries in Central Europe dealing with the war, they are putting security at the top, and nature conservation is a second. And that identifying many of our positions, especially for transboundary cooperation, for supporting ecological corridors, migration corridors, etc. Something what never gave what we would think before about new and underestimated the value of nature. Nature help us to survive and help us to protect the country. As you know, Russians been from Kyiv trying to get from the north, and ways plenty of rivers, plenty of ponds, and plenty of forest. And that in the spring, many of the vehicles been stuck in the mud and they not been able to move. And our soldiers also destroyed many bridges, which also stopped invasion in many ways. So rivers availability, flooding help really to stop enemy. And that helps us to understand when we get in each country more nature, and that help for each us not only to have clean environment, but also to feel more secure, better protect your own country. Also, nature conservation is a part of nature resources. In the country, we're talking about many issues, but it's something which is also we want to get our resources back. And with many, while Russia trying to catch many coal deposits, oil deposits, metal, lithium, rare earth, and another crucial minerals, including lithium. And that is also linked with many protected area, which is near many national parks, which is up to now, several national parks are completely destroyed, and up to almost 30% of Ukrainian territory of protected areas being just under occupation, and many of forests just completely. Sure, part of them will be, but the most difficult is the mines, which is still on field and still very difficult to handle at the current moment. So we're getting economic destruction, social, environmental contamination of habitats, surface and vegetation forest damage, animals kill and run away. Nature will not be the same in many areas. And war buffer zone along the border. So mines getting really a problem, and it's something what we will face for the next, I guess, up to 20 years in the country, when many wilderness area will be just filled with mines, because we, at the current moment, mines getting much more sophisticated. Mines in agricultural field now very intensively cleaned, but mines in the nature will take more than 20 years, I guess, because it's a huge area is now occupied. What we do, it's like I said, you have on another side, when you're dealing with some peaceful in western part of country, when it's definitely happening explosions, it's definitely now is less and less, but you already got adapted to, and you're running. So life is very close to the normal, I would say. It's definitely not a normal, but in the sense of work, it's very much. I'm just showing you, sharing picture from our mission and result of our mission during the war period. Actually, it's a rescue of Narcissus Valley, when we trying very important habitats been almost disappeared or completely reduced. And that is one of the picture actually taken 1 week ago, when we see as a result of some restoration activities on restoring wet meadow near the border with Romania, Hungary, and Slovakia in the western part of Ukraine, when it's quite safe and very quiet in some way. War is getting something what we never expected. Many people started, they've been refugees, but at the same time, they want to get to the nature, because war causing a stress, and people want to get nature and to do something. So we're using civil society involvement in nature protection during the war. So you see the picture on the right side, when up to 120, 30 people participated in building imitation beavers dams to keep water in the forest and in wet meadows for restoring habitats. Also, to get more civilized country, you need to constantly fight illegal activities and corruption. And we still in activity, despite the war, it is still plenty of room for that, and we continue something what we've been doing before the war, fighting different illegal activity, different what we consider as a potential cases for corruption, and that is still as a point. And that is a situation when you're quite far from the war zone in some way. Definitely, time from time rockets exploding, time from time some people dying, but it's you get adapted. And then we now also working some of the projects that have been frozen as a period of war. One of them is a Chernobyl exclusion zone, which is not easy to run. And I can tell you some area when we making restoration, they are just with mines. And it's extremely difficult to cooperate with military, which would allow you to go and to do your work. So that is getting very challenging, very difficult, and time what we've been planning, it's just getting much longer, much longer than it's expecting, because the war and really Not the national park or biosphere reserve, not anymore is a host for this area, but military is a host of this area as a security. National security is a primary for the moment than nature conservation, and in this case. Just beside that, we're just building international cooperation on green recovery. It's very important. Despite many explosions, despite pollution by the war, we're getting very important mechanism and helping communities to clean the soil, to clean the water, and to use nature, some habitats close for recreation purposes of people. And that is really trying to build on it certain extension of our work. And it's getting better, but it is still, everything is got certain limitation based on war, based on constant. When you're closer to the war zone, you very often, each almost day, you're getting siren, you need to go to shelter, and this all work is getting much difficult and much complicated. Even to get to the study area, you're going to many checkpoints, which is you're checking your identity, and that is security is very tight for everything. So the every getting reflection on the nature conservation. But beside that, we see certain step, we see development, and not only, I would say, our NGO, me, but I see some others slowly getting step by step, many of them getting to the war zone, and see some of the national park completely destroying and trying to provide them with some capacity, with some support, and slowly to recover. You would be impressed if we see on recovery of near the Kiev, which been heavy fighting in Irpin city, which is very close to Kiev, and now almost 70% it's recovered. But besides such success of small town, if you go much far to the north and you go east and especially south, it's just huge area, 100 kilometers completely devastated settlements, and that is a huge challenge ahead with support of communities and support of the nature in the future. And that will definitely shape of our projects, our intention, our strategy. So something which is more needed for people and for the nature in the near future. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to come back in here. Bohdan, thank you so much for sharing that story with us. It's a difficult story. You know, when you and I were doing our test call a little bit earlier, I was, you know, we were kind of sharing how you were scheduled to join us last year for the festival, and you know, days before things happened, things changed completely. So it is hard to see those images, but I guess it's kind of, there's always hope somewhere. And seeing that picture that you shared of that site with the wildflowers and the sun set, you know, there's still success to be found in conservation, even under trying situations.
Yeah, we're quite positive looking ahead, because for us is plenty of opportunity. We see the way how we can help to recover the country. It's definitely will be nature conservation a little bit limited. Like you cannot do everything, and especially for some area, as security will be the primary, and some ecological corridors which we've been dreaming, especially between Ukraine and Belarus, and it looks like for us, for next years will be very limited or almost closed. But we always looking on the situation when nature is breaks through any barriers, and that how it will work.
Yeah. So thinking about the challenges being faced, how has it been in this period to find funding for some of these projects? Is there still funding coming in internationally for conservation, or is it going all in one spot to the war effort?
Yeah, I can tell you something you would not believe, but at the beginning, when everything started, like few days after the war started, we just got only Marshall Fund, which been supported. We finished some projects on with volunteers. They said, "Oh, you handle like you wanted. We completely want you to be safe." But many others, they just said, "Okay, let's close everything because you already don't exist," and that been hurting in some way. And we said, and I spent plenty of time to several donors explaining, yeah, let's guys see, let's wait for 1-2 months.
Yeah.
And then I said I always can put my pen to sign a mutually agreement on termination, but I don't want to do this, and I definitely want to go ahead. So I've been able to convince them, and we shifted our talk for the May and June to 2022, and then showed much more optimistic outcome from everything. So we've been really on the edge and they've been honest with me, and they said, "You look, you already don't exist, and it makes no sense to run the projects." That was the situation.
Yeah, that is not a great way to look at things, because just like people, nature is resilient as well. And yeah, so it sounds like you did have some supporters who kind of heard that message and waited to see how things would end up. So you mentioned some successes at the beginning. You shared the UNESCO sites, that the World Heritage sites. We've had that come up multiple times today, where conservationists have talked about where they work and their UNESCO sites. So it sounds like you were really intimately involved in creating some of these sites. What is that process like? Is it a really long process?
Yeah, it's true. It's long process. Exist situation when you need to deal with bureaucracy of UNESCO. You need to deal with bureaucracy UCN, which got also very tough view. And for us, many, Central Europe, it's not like America or Canada with vast area of wilderness. They are very much, it's a manageable habitat in many way. And these fragments, which is left like old growth forest or virgin forest, what we believe they are virgin, many say, oh, they are just in some limitations of region. They are not easy to get for this situation, because they are looking from the global view, like on huge American or Russian areas. But here we say, okay, if we don't save this, they will stop to exist. And that was very hard work with our international conservation community from Central Europe to fight. And it's interesting, when in Poland was a meeting on UNESCO, we just been lobbying and convinced, not EUCN, which they have the mission, they check, they have conclusion. And their conclusion was not to support this nomination. But we convinced members of UNESCO. We were sitting in the hall and just inviting everybody, giving arguments and like lobbying that. And when voting came, they just been supporting that nomination, and we won. Despite it's very rare happened when EUCN conclusion was opposite compared to what we've got.
Yeah, well, I can see that you and your colleagues are very convincing people, and I think that's what it takes when you have something special and it needs to be protected and it's unique. you stand up for it, you protect it, you do what you have to do.
We are dealing situation when very intensive forestry interesting to get. If forest is getting ripe for them, is if road is built, they are interested to cut it as soon as possible. And these habitats like 200, 300, even more years old, and they just would be happy to log them. And this is not just, it's just for many European countries. And also this is opening for us opportunity on another level of nature conservation. So now you have the network. In this network, you have almost all European countries. It's like environmental European Union, when people just protecting the most valuable, this beech forest, virgin oak grove clusters. So this is something really unique happened, and they are still uncertain. Despite that, they are still expanding each year. I would say once per 2-3 years, countries preparing with the bid, and then when it's now working, so to extend it, it's much easy. So it was quite nice to get it, but it's not just my it's without colleagues of international communities, that would not be possible. It's all together we are power.
Absolutely. And so, conservation is challenging in most circumstances, let alone when it's in an active war zone. You mentioned how when you work in the west of the country, you could almost close your eyes and feel like things are very close to normal. Yet you go to the east or the north and you're getting blocked by the military, or trying to convince them to clear mines so that you can get into some of these spots. So, what's driving you these days? What's your motivation? What keeps you going?
No, we just want to be successful country. We just want to be not worse. The country was really getting very hard over the 100 years. One war, second war, now the modern war, but we are all driven to get civilized modern country. That is how it's running, and nature conservation is a part of it. We just don't consider it should be very much different compared to Germany, and especially to protect our nature values. Because what I see over the years, something what up to 20 years ago or 30 years ago, something already stopped to exist. And that because of poor management in the country, because of corruption, because of different reasons. But we lost, and we should not done that. And we need to stop it, definitely, and to get it protected for people, because after us is coming another generation. After that is coming another one. You don't need just to have the law. You need to have the nice diverse nature. Like I said, nature helps to protect your country. Absolutely. Diversity of nature helps. So you have forest, river, mines, bogs, and that is really incredible for you.
Absolutely. Well, Bohdan, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to put up your Instagram handle here if people want to follow along on your journey, if they want to support you in any way. Yeah, I hope that people tuning in today, as well as those who will be tuning in over the next couple of weeks, will dig a little bit deeper and find out about some of that biodiversity in a place like the Ukraine. And, it's obviously pretty darn unique. Those World UNESCO Heritage Sites, they don't just give those out. So it's an area worth protecting, an area worth fighting for. And if there's one thing you can tell from Ukrainians, is they have a fighting spirit and they stand up for what's important.
Thank you, Joe.
All right. Thank you. You have a great night.
Thank you.